Welcome back. If you haven't been following this educational series, I'd recommend you tune in to the previous episodes in the Flexique Fridays playlist. This one's going to focus on Flexique on wafer paper. It's been a topic that's been of great interest to our followers. When you apply a Flexique to wafer paper, you give it durability and flexibility. You eliminate breakage. Before we go into how you do that, though, let's talk about a few points that may affect the level of flexibility you can get. Remember, in the previous episode, we talked about adding some flavor to the Flexique to flavor it to match your cake profile, but we also talked about changing the level of flexibility by varying the amount of the B packet that you add when you mix it initially. Less B, less flexibility. So there's one way. Another way is to coat only one side of your wafer paper. Because wafer paper has some thickness, some stiffness, you can get a little bit more rigidity by only coating one side of the wafer paper. Or you can use a thicker wafer paper. Yes, if you don't know that already, wafer paper does come in various thicknesses or grades. So the one that we recommend using for the best flexibility with Flexique is the AD or O grade. It's 0.27 millimeters thick, and it's pretty floppy by itself. Nice and thin, so when you use Flexique, it absorbs and gives it really good flexibility. The middle grade is an ADD, which is about 0.4 millimeters. It gives it a little bit more rigidity. And then finally, you can get a DD level grade, which is almost like cardstock. If you want things to stand up, the DD grade is what you want to use. It's 0.6 millimeters. So, like I said, it's like cardstock. You can use it for things like a frame around your edible picture, or you can create playing cards that can stand up then on your cake. Now, there are some nomenclature inconsistencies. So if you're looking for a particular thickness and you can't find the DD or ADD, check the description and look at what thickness it is. 0.27 for the basic AD or 0 or O. You've got the 0.35 or 0.4 millimeters for the ADD, and then the 0.6 to 0.9 range for the DD cardstock. One final note, the hardness of your water may affect the flexibility of your final outcome. So if that's a concern or you want to play safe, use bottled water or distilled water when you mix your Flexique. All right, let's dive into using Flexique on wafer paper, shall we? First of all, wafer paper does come with a shiny side, which is flat, and a textured side, which has little divots. When you're coating wafer paper, you want to start by coating the flat or shiny side. I've got some Flexique that I warmed up here, and we're going to start by coating it. Now, you want to make sure that you apply enough Flexique so that it glistens, and cover it all the way to the edges, because you can cut off that excess, remember, and reuse it. Now, to do it the other side, you're going to flip it and lay it down on one edge and apply some more on top nicely so that you squeeze out any bubbles like this that may occur. And that's the reason why you wanted to start on the flat side, so there's less chance of trapping bubbles. Now, if you do find that you have some matte areas, that indicates that you didn't put enough Flexique on there. So here you can see that it's matte. The Flexique actually absorbed into the wafer paper. So all you have to do is add a little bit more onto that area. Or if it's started to dry too fast, then wait a bit and you can add another coat on top when it dries. Okay? Remember, coating only one side gives you more rigidity to your final outcome. If you want your total flexibility, coat both sides. Use enough Flexique so that it glistens. Add another coat if you need to. That's how you get your flexibility in your wafer paper. So after a few minutes, when Flexique dries to touch, so it doesn't come off on your fingers, which is the best time to add whatever powders, lusters, or cornstarch to it that you want. I'm going to add a little bit of luster to this side. Okay, so you luster one side, then you flip it over and either luster or cornstarch the back side. Now, before you flip it over though, what I'd recommend is that you trim the edges. It's easier to trim the edges while it's attached. Otherwise, if you flip it over and luster the back side, then you try to trim it and it'll slide all over your silicone mat. So I'm just going to trim the edges. You see how easily it cuts? Like that. And you pick it up and flip it over. And then you can use cornstarch or luster to luster the backside or cornstarch the backside. If you're going to not see both sides, then why waste the luster? Just cornstarch the backside. Okay, and then there you go. Ready to go. Now in its initial stage, it's going to be a little bit fragile, so don't go stretching it a lot, but it's ready to use. The alternative is to leave it attached to your silicone sheet until it totally cures and evaporates, and you can do that overnight, and then it's ready to go. So it's ready to use, but it's still a little fragile. So the longer it stays on the silicone mat, the more it cures and the stronger it gets. Flexi can also be used on printed wafer paper. That way you have the durability and flexibility, but also protectability. The colors won't run. There are some precautions though when you use Flexique on printed wafer paper. First of all, you don't want to heat the Flexique too much. Get it heated just until it melts and then use it. You want to coat the printed side first. Hopefully it's printed on the flat shiny side, but if not, make sure you start with coating the printed side first. And third, apply enough Flexique onto the wafer paper, but only spread it in one direction once or twice. If you do more than that, you're going to start pulling the colors, and the colors will start pulling and streaking. All right? Michelle Sweeney actually shouted out in one of our shows that Flexique enhances the color on printed wafer paper. I put a link to that video in the descriptions if you want to check it out. But it's true. Okay, so I have a small section of printed wafer paper, and I've heated up some Flexique. Now remember I said begin by coating the printed side first, put enough on, and spread it in only one direction. Now, you flip it over just like you did the other one, starting with one edge, and smooth it out. Remember, as always, get it all the way to the edges. Remember that excess can be cut off and reused. So once it dries, you can take a pizza cutter and just cut the edges off and just reuse the excess. Now when that dries, you can luster it or cornstarch it, but it's going to give it an opaque look, and you might disguise the print just a little bit. So if you want to leave it clear, spread some shortening on it, or spray it with some edible chocolate spray, or just let it sit on the silicone mat overnight. It'll dry, it'll cure, and most of the stickiness will be gone the next day. So you don't have to worry about it, it'll stay clear. So you might ask yourself, how do I make larger pieces of fabric? We talked about how to do that with Flexique by itself. You just keep painting over a large sheet of silicone or vinyl. But with Flexique on wafer paper, you have to do something a little bit different. Okay, so I have a sheet of Flexique on wafer paper that I've done just a little while ago. I'm going to attach another piece to it. Very simply, again, start by coating the shiny side first, all right? Apply enough Flexique so that it glistens, remember? All right, now it's time to flip it over. When I flip it over, I can either abut it like this, or I can overlap it like this. And then continue to apply the Flexique to it. What the overlap does is give you a stronger seam. And that's all there is to it. And you can continue to do that, attaching pieces to make as big of a fabric as you need. The overlap seam will be stronger, so it gives you more resistance to any kind of tearing. So if you need something that you're going to hang or manipulate, you might want to overlap it. If not, you can abut it. In either case, when you luster or cornstarch it, that seam will basically almost disappear in the final fabric. Okay, so Flexique on wafer paper can be cut just like regular Flexique can be when it's still fresh. So like I said, this one I did just a little while ago. I can trim it with a pizza wheel cutter, and it very easily trims, or I can use shape cutters, and it then cuts very nicely. I haven't dusted these before I cut them. So the one thing about Flexique on wafer paper is it won't get any firmer than it is after 24 hours. If you want to store it, make sure that you let it cure and dry for a few days before you put it into any kind of a container or plastic bag. Or you can just let it sit on the shelf on wax paper or paper towels, or just on the shelf. Now there are a few more things that you can do with Flexique on wafer paper. We'll delve into those next time, so see you then.